Good morning. Welcome to our June Keys penguin habitat. My name is Frankie and I'm an aviculturist here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. And right now I'm going to be doing our first feed of the day for our Magellanic penguins. I'm going to be offering some herring and capelin, herring being larger than the capelin. And you might notice that these birds do take the fish down whole. So sometimes they'll eat right here at the bucket, or they might turn around and you might get to see them take that fish down. But it is an interesting thing. These birds do not chew their food, so they'll take that fish down whole. And I'll get back on the microphone in a little bit to talk to you more about Magellanic penguins once most of the birds get through their eating. Thank you. For those of you just joining, my name is Frankie and I'm an aviculturist here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, and I work with our aquatic birds, and I am in the middle of feeding our Magellanic penguins. We do write down every single fish that all of our birds eat, so it's really important that we pay attention during this. And our goal is not to feed the gulls, so 2 for goal, 0 for me. But right now we're in our migration season. Migration season is a very important season for these penguins. Not all penguins go through the migration period that these guys go through. In fact, they're the only one of their species of the banded penguins that go through this migration period. So it's about 3 to 4 months in the water following their food source. Bite. So once this migration season is over, they actually go right into their breeding season. So Magellanic penguins do mate for life. And here at the aquarium, we have 23 birds, and 18 of which are paired up and utilize these burrows or nest boxes to my left and behind me to lay their eggs and raise their young if they do have any eggs that year. So 13 of our birds were raised here successfully here at the aquarium. Don't bite me. Anderson, herring bite. 4 of our birds are Brazilian rescues. I know I'm. So those 4 birds that are Brazilian rescues are Kate, Avery, Robbie, and Roxy. Robbie's actually coming on the deck right up here. He's in the water kind of still. And those birds are very important to our colony, but not just our colony, but all birds within, all Magellanic penguins within zoos and aquariums. Robbie herring bite. Because they have wild genetics. These birds are all considered founder birds. Robbie herring bite. And they really allow for all of the institutions within the Association of Zoos and Aquariums to maintain longevity for their Magellanic penguins. So I did mention we have 23 birds here and 13 hatched here, but 7 of those chicks actually were raised by the same parents, Roxy and Floyd, and Roxy is one of those Brazilian rescues. Did Patsy get a fish? Okay. D. herring. So because of that, we've now got a lot of genetics from those same parents. So Roxy and Floyd, Roxy being a Brazilian rescue, and although her genetics are great, we don't want to keep all of those genetics here at the aquarium. So it's possible that in the future, maybe one of those offspring will go to another facility in order to spread those important genetics that they have. Hi, fish. I think I'm down a herring. So I did mention that we have 4 Brazilian rescues, Kate, Avery, Robbie, and Roxy. Kate and Avery are a bonded pair, but Robbie and Roxy are not. Roxy is with Floyd, and Robbie's with Patsy. So together, those 6 birds are passing on very important genetics. Paddles 2, she got a vitamin, yeah. Paddles 3. And all of these birds are a part of a species survival plan. That species survival plan does exactly what I just mentioned. They are making sure that the genetics within the Magellanic penguin population is varied throughout all the facilities. So there's about 230 Magellanic penguins within zoos and aquariums. But in the wild, there are many more. There's about 4 million birds. So they are not completely worse off. They have some cousin species. The African penguins are, there's only 40,000. So 40,000 compared to 4 million, they are doing okay. But climate change is affecting the way that they go through their normal seasons. For example, when the chicks are nice and fluffy and downy, it's normally dry air, so those chicks are able to be raised until they are nice and waterproof, but there's more rain now in those areas. So unfortunately, chicks are developing hypothermia, and if they can't get past that cold, rainy season that they now have to go through, they may not survive. So we want to make sure that we are making conscious decisions from sustainable fishing and just worrying about our CO2 emissions. Did you catch those? That was Avery. Yeah. Okay. Patsy. But here at breeding season, once the eggs are laid, both parents will take care of the egg for the 40-day incubation period, and then they will actually both take part in raising. So those flip-flop days on the nest. One day the one parent will be off feeding in the water while the other is feeding their young, and then the next day they'll switch. So the other parent will start hunting for food, and then they'll feed their young. And once the chick here at the aquarium gets a little too curious, and maybe they start to roam out of that burrow, we actually take them behind the scenes to a nursery where we take the chicks into our own hands. We'll teach them how to eat from us. Once they are nice and waterproof, we will teach them how to swim. And at about 60 to 80 days, they are full grown and ready to rejoin the habitat. And once they come back, their parents may not acknowledge them as their offspring. They are just another bird that's in this colony. So Esther had 3, and then D. Okay. Who needs one? Madison? Oh. Yeah, please. So once they come back into the habitat, we actually enter a very important season for these birds, their molting season. So all of the adult birds, excluding any chicks that may, or juveniles that may or may not be on habitat, they go through this catastrophic molt. And molting is when an animal will shed its fur, feathers, or skin in order to replace them with new fur, feathers, or skin. And since these are birds, they are shedding or molting their feathers. And Magellanic penguins have over 75 feathers per square inch. So that's hundreds of thousands of feathers per bird, and they do this in a 3-day period. 3 to 5 days, they have now shuffed off all of their feathers. And then they spend several weeks getting ready to make the new feathers nice and waterproof. So before they enter that molt, they've actually bulked up. They are full of food because when they are molting, they are not waterproof. If they're not waterproof, they can't swim. And if they can't swim, they cannot hunt for food and eat. So they are nice and chunky and large, and they're living off of that food that they've stored inside their body for several weeks, sometimes 6 weeks on land with no access to food or salt water. If there's some fresh water, that's very beneficial for them, but that's not always the case. So then they've molted out all their feathers. They have new feathers coming in. They spend all their time preening or reorganizing or properly positioning each feather back into their rightful spot. So they might look a little disheveled. They'll take their beak. They have a specialized hook on that beak, and they'll relocate the feathers. There's a couple of birds doing it in the water right now. And actually one right there is kind of twisting his neck and dipping it into his backside where his tail is. And that is where his uropygial gland is. And that is an oil gland, a preen gland, or a waterproofing gland. So they will stick their beak into that gland and coat their beak and then coat all of their feathers. So they spend 4, 5, 6 weeks waterproofing, recoating every single feather until they are perfectly waterproofed and ready to get back into the water. And then once they are waterproofed and ready to get back, and they pretty much jump right into migration season. So that's the season we're in right now. All of these birds molted in August and September and definitely finished up by October. There's a little short, brief period where they're not molting, they're not migrating, but now we're in full-blown migration. And this is the only time of year that they have to worry about predators, major predators anyway. So they are very alert. Sometimes it seems that they're skittish. So if when a gull came down and grabbed a fish, you notice every single bird jumped back in the water. And that's a good thing. That means that their senses are properly heightened and they are reacting, because in the wild they have sharks and sea lions and other whales, killer whales, to worry about. So they want to make sure that they can get away. And if these birds aren't perfectly waterproof, then they are considered vulnerable to the colony. They swim in huge groups, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of birds. And if you're that one bird that isn't waterproof, you might become waterlogged. And you'll be the slowest one, and that's the one those predators are going to get. So they know that they need to maintain all of their feathers. Feathers are usually a primary indicator of when a bird isn't feeling all that great. And usually there's something else going on if they aren't taking care of their feathers. But if you take a look at all of these birds, you can see that they have little beads of water rolling off their backside. That is an excellent sign of waterproofing. And I wouldn't say that anyone here had poor feather quality. So they're all doing what they're supposed to be doing, maintaining their feathers on a daily basis. And they'll spend hours preening those feathers every single day. But that is a little bit about our colony and about Magellanic penguins in general. I didn't mention they can be found off the coast of Chile and Argentina. And if you need a visual, there's a map on the side of the habitat over there. So these birds do not need snow or ice to survive. They live in a climate similar to Long Beach, California, which is why we have an open habitat, and they can be out here all year round. But with that, I am going to sign off. And before I do, I want to thank you all so much for coming out. We would not be able to do what we do here without all of your support. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to anyone in a blue polo. And that includes myself if you see me exiting the habitat. Thank you.